Welcome to Spirit School. I'm Danielle S, a medium and spiritual mentor and storyteller with over a decade experience, here to guide you through the profound intersections of spirituality, healing, and self-discovery. Spirit School is more than a podcast. It's a sanctuary, a place where you can connect with the wisdom of the unseen world, explore the depths of your own soul, and uncover the boundless life force energy within. Whether you're stepping into your spiritual gifts, navigating a healing journey, or seeking tools for a life filled with intention and meaning, you belong here. In each episode is a beacon of light, blending heartfelt stories, practical teachings, and reflections from my own path. Together, we'll celebrate the magic in the mundane and discover the extraordinary in everyday moments. Through Spirit School, we co-create a world where hope thrives, inspiration uplifts, and the power of spirit is undeniable. Welcome to Spirit School. Let's continue this journey of light and transformation together. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Spirit School. I hope you're having a fantastic week. Welcoming back the co-host, the other Danielle. How are you doing, Danielle?
Doing fantastic. Thank you.
Amazing. I'm noticing we're wearing matching kind of shirts today and our walls in the background also match. It's a little bit crazy. But yeah, we're hoping to pick up our conversation. Last week, we started talking about integrity in the space. I was fielding a question from Instagram that came through asking about client practitioner boundaries. And that's kind of where our conversation took us last week. And it was very fulfilling. We got great feedback. I had one of our listeners show me a picture that she was taking pages of notes and said it was highly valuable. So very happy to have this organic conversation with you. But the reading was actually just our first time ever meeting. Our relationship has flourished over these past, I think it's been 5.5 years. So I thought as this episode, we could just continue the conversation at my kitchen table at this reading and then go into our professional working relationship and how we manage it all.
I think that's a great idea. I was reflecting on this. Actually, I had a drive this morning and I was reflecting on our original reading and some of the readings that you've done for me since and how that shifted over time. So I'm excited to talk about the evolution of our relationship and sort of how that evolution has impacted the mediumship you've done for me as we go as well.
Yeah, well, you were there for the filming too, so you've seen the most recent. I was thinking about that yesterday. I was like, Danielle, too, the progression of my mediumship. I've been doing mediumship for 11, 12 years, and you've been here for half of it. So I was also kind of curious about your perspective on how that has shifted over the years. So you're kind of reading my mind here. So
Perfect.
We are at the kitchen table, and you have your first reading with me. Let's start there.
Okay. I came to you, as I mentioned in the earlier episode, via recommendation from my naturopath because I was still dealing with a lot of grief that was affecting my health after my father had passed away. And so when I came to you, I was really looking forward to having that connection. But you brought through so much more than that. You brought through that connection, but more than that, looking back, you brought through some psychic pieces for me as well. So I'm looking into the future. One of those things I reflected on, I think last year in an Instagram post where you had said, at the time my husband and I were renting, and you said that we would buy a house because we had wanted to. You said that we would buy a house, but that it would be quirky. I can't remember the exact words. I'm gonna put in a snippet of the conversation in here so the audience can hear.
So what I was feeling around that is you guys need a really unique house.
Yeah.
I don't feel like you'll feel totally at home like a house like this or
Right.
a cookie cutter, right?
We've been talking about condos and it doesn't feel right.
I definitely feel that whatever you guys end up investing in has to be unique.
Yeah.
Just for the energy of you.
Yeah.
And for the flourishing of the family as a whole. But I do see a kid there with you guys too. So
Awesome.
Just know that this is kind of a free will thing.
Yeah.
I feel it's not this is your divine intervention plan. I do feel that this is more free will, and just know that whatever you do, if you end up getting the fixer upper, that you need to start having conversations around investing in manpower to support him. He can't do it all.
Okay.
Yeah,
That
I
makes
feel
sense.
he'll get burnt out.
Right.
So a bit of sweat equity, but there's definitely going to be more investment in there too.
Right. That makes
And
sense.
it will pay off tenfold, right? Yeah, I definitely feel like it's totally in the realm of your possibility. Homeownership is never without its like expenses and challenges, but I do get the sense that you guys are so excited about like creating foundation, and that's a really big step towards that,
Yeah.
right? So yeah, I feel good about it.
We bought a house. It was a miner's cabin in the 1940s that has been added on to twice that we know of. We found out after the fact that there's structural issues that need work on, and my husband has yet to relinquish control of the house to any outside workers. I'm still advocating for that. But the amount of effort and work he has put into this house, I think, is just incredible and so true to what you told me in that moment.
Yeah. And I developed as a medium for years. By the time we met, I was already doing my work for quite a bit, but I never learned how to do psychic work when I was training as a medium. I always learned about like evidence, and I had to train myself how to do messages. And it was when I first started doing readings for the public, I think my first 6 months, people wanted psychic readings. And so I had to learn at my kitchen table, like live, IRL, how to do psychic readings and approach them to be evidential in nature. So sometimes these things you can actually validate for years to come. But I do remember seeing, like, I think I even said something about like a wartime house. And we didn't have anything like that in Squamish. So I remember us talking about like location. I don't remember what I said in the end. And you ended up, of course, somewhere else. But yeah, you ended up in a house that I could picture in my mind's eye. So that was kind of neat. Though I do wish you were still in Squamish.
Us too, us too. I'm curious with you learning that in real life. One of the things when I do readings, I always pull cards for past and present before I'll go future for someone because I want them to be able to validate what's coming through, and you can't necessarily validate future things in the moment. And I want them to have that trust. Do you find it important to bring through like evidentiary mediumship pieces before going into a psychic reading?
Yeah, I approach my psychic work exactly as I approach my mediumship work. It's the exact same format. It's bring through information that is uncommon and can be validated, and then move into messages and future prediction. If I do not get that kind of unique pieces of information or details accurate, I won't feel comfortable or confident bringing through predictive things. I think people really can tend to defer out their power to us when we are in this like psychic dynamic where we're giving people like advice and tips on how to move in the future. And one thing I recognized really early on is people really listen to you. They really do listen to you, and your words carry a lot of weight. And that's one of the things I talk about in the declaration a lot, because we have a big responsibility when we're in this dynamic. So I got to do the evidence first, and then I'll pass through the messages. One thing I started doing in my mediumship readings about 6-7 years ago was asking the spirit world to also bring through information that could be validated later, because it was important for me when it comes to empowering my clients that they know that spirit is communicating with them even when I'm not there. So I like to give people some mediumship evidence that could be validated later, so that when they have these experiences, they get some extra magic and they're like, oh, spirit is around me. And oh, I can pick up what they're putting down. I don't need to be in Danielle's presence to be able to do that. And I think that's pretty ethical as well.
I think that's a really beautiful sentiment. And I think that one of the things I've always loved about your approach to mediumship and teaching is that when I had my first reading, I was 17, and it was a medium that, we had heard about word of mouth. We drove like 3 hours to see her. She was not on the internet or anything at that point. And when she became sort of more elderly and couldn't do the work anymore and then eventually passed away, there was a long time in my life where there I didn't know any mediums, and there wasn't, and so then, fast forward to meeting you, and you had this message of everyone can do this. Everyone can communicate with spirit. Everyone can do this. It's, and that just sort of opened my mind so much to be able to approach that myself and approach that communication with spirit myself. But like you said, also to encourage other people who have, lost a loved one not to become dependent
Mm.
on someone else to be a communicator for them.
Yeah, well, and we see that in some harmful behavior in the space. I have so many stories of, not me, this hasn't happened to me personally, but clients and friends and students that this has happened to, where people will kind of like lure you in, but only give you so much and say that you have to continue to come back, or you need like 6 sessions, especially when it comes to people's health and wellness. I've seen a lot of that type of behavior. I've heard a lot of that type of behavior. So I think as space holders in this dynamic, like, it's super important to empower our people. Early on, I had a very strict policy. You can only get one reading a year. And as I've become a little bit more known, it's not easy to get 2 readings in a year anyway, so I don't necessarily have to have that policy. But it was really important to me. If people kept coming back, I was like, maybe you need like a mentorship, right? Like, instead of me kind of spoon feeding you life. It's like, you got to figure this out for yourself as well. I know that as our relationship kind of progressed, you ended up sending your family to me. I think that was kind of like the next step of our evolution. So you were trusting enough to hand me the grief of your loved ones, which was a blessing to be able to read for them as well. So thank you for doing that, because it's all word of mouth, right? All of this work.
Friends and family have come to see you, and then from there we sort of evolved into COVID times, which was, it's so funny to look back where, I'm a contract worker. I call it in my real life, and this is like my fun life, but I'm a contract worker. And so all of a sudden during COVID, the companies I worked for all kind of went like, oh no, and froze. And so work was a bit scarce. And you were the only person that was like growing during COVID. And you had this post up, looking for an assistant, you needed help. And I reached out. I can't even remember what I said in my message to you, but it just aligned so perfectly. And that was, 5.5 years ago now,
Yeah.
that we started working together. One of the reflections that I had today that had never even occurred to me, because you have read for me since then, but spontaneously. My dad came through at the retreat, not last year, but the year before, or this year, the year before. And my dad came through again at the one of the group readings you've done. And there hasn't been a psychic element to any of the readings that you've done for me since that initial one. And I don't think it's on purpose, but I was reflecting on, we have a much closer relationship now between like being friends and working together. And I was like, oh, that's interesting, because I wonder if a psychic reading would cross a boundary, or like, I was curious if that was intentional, or if that was more just sort of spirit being spirit on your end.
It's kind of funny. I'm really a medium. You know what I mean? I would say that psychic is much more spontaneous for me. Like, I'm a medium through, and I got covered in shivers even just kind of declaring that. It's just like, I'm a medium. Even when I was filming the show, mediumship is always at the front of my heart. And then I'll go in there like, oh, well, they want to know about developing themselves. I'm like, oh, it's mentorship. It's like, I'm just such a medium first and foremost, that I'm always going to probably start with mediumship. I remember though, my first mentor, because we became really close friends, and I was even like bridesmaid in her wedding. Like, we got really, really close. And she did tell me at some point, she said, I won't be able to read for you anymore because we're too close now. And the way that she kind of explained it to me, and I get a little bit of this too, one of the things that works the best in these type of readings is detachment of outcome, right? And when you have somebody that you're close to and that you are so invested in their thrive, it is really hard to separate what you wish for somebody versus what is honestly coming through, right? So sometimes like that might kind of like creep up. I'm always open for it. But if you were to ever be in a room with me and be like, hey, can you tune into this? I would probably do it. But the thing is, I walk around life like not thinking I'm a medium, not thinking that I'm psychic. Like, I'm a mom. I'm usually focused on like whatever's coming like next. I forget. So I'm not always like tuned in or trying to tune in. If people ask, I can. But I do walk around life pretty muggle like sometimes, and I forget because I'm a mom of young kids. It's like, I got a lot of things on the go. So I'm like, oh yeah, I'm a psychic. Yeah, I could tune into that. So there's a little bit of that too, but yeah. Yeah.
I was just, how many times have we texted each other saying, with no context, can you pull
Mm.
a card for me? Are you near a pendulum? Like, can you give me a yes or a no on this? But I love that it's sort of more to that point where we don't give the context until afterwards when we make those
Yes.
requests of each other.
That's one of the examples I was actually wanting to give. So I'm glad you brought that up because I use this as an example all the time. So when I first discovered a pendulum, it was like a really spiritually charged and intense experience. It actually goes down as probably one of the top 3 spiritual experiences I ever had because it was so organic and it came from a meditation and I didn't even know what was happening. It was very spiritual, but then the thinking mind comes in and I'm like, am I moving this? And then you hear people say pendulums are muscle testing. And then I was confused. Is it spirit? Is it me? Is it my higher self? And so like the journey alone for a pendulum has been very interesting because my mediumship, I use no tools. It's me and spirit. My practice has 0 tools attached to it, no cards, no nothing. So as I started kind of getting curious about some of these tools, the doubting mind started to come in. Isn't that kind of weird? Like I think for some other people it would be opposite. They would get the spiritual tools and then kind of go into mediumship. But so because the doubting mind came in, me and Danielle here came up with this process where we would just message each other and just say, hey, give me a yes or a no. Pull out your pendulum, give me a yes or a no. And then we would get the answer and we would just be like, is that good? is that what you wanted to hear? And that's how we tune in for each other because we are very invested in each other. And what I like about your psychic work is you do a lot of psychic work and I've had a lot of readings from you over the years and you're always willing to give me your intuition is I really try in my mediumship to not give my perspective. It's like purely from spirit. But what I love about you and why I wanted to hire you, which I'll go back to in a few minutes here, is because I really do value your perspective. So not only do you bring your intuition and the intuition from the tarot and the cards that you're working with, but you also have such an incredible lived experience in your life that you have so much perspective to bring. And so like I actually hire you because of your human perspective as well as your spiritual perspective. But you also have been with me long enough that sometimes I've gone to you, I'm like, Danielle, just tell me what to do. Just tell me what my next move is. I will do whatever you say because I can't make a decision. I get decision fatigue all the time because I have a lot of opportunity in my life and I'm like, I don't know what to go after. And I defer that out to you a lot. And I'm like, make a decision for me, Danielle. Make a decision. So, yeah.
Well, and I think like and I thank you. Thank you for saying that because I think you really gave me permission to put value to my lived experience. Because I mean, I think, one of the reasons we connect is we both lived messy lives in some ways, right? And we have a lot of lived experience. And you really brought purpose to that with your like explanation around, like you have to have some lived experience for in order for spirit to be able to communicate with you, to bring pieces of your own story into the language so that you can communicate that to somebody that might be going through something similar. Or however that works for the individual, and references, right? Being able to reference more things because you've had that lived experience, and you've really working with you, beyond the development piece, but working with you as in our muggle work, you've really empowered me with that. Like you've really empowered me to use that intuition and that experience. And I appreciate that because it certainly bleeds into the rest of my life.
Yeah, well, thank you. And tying that into something you said earlier, like I do believe everyone can do mediumship because it is the world of energy. And we are always engaged with the world of energy in some way, shape, or form. It's just about being aware of it, conscious of it, and using your will accordingly for it. And then the other thing I was going to say around that too is like I've had a quote for years now, the only prerequisite to mediumship is a life well lived. Because the spirit world does like to use, and it actually makes you a more qualified person to work with humans in humanity, on the humanity front, because mediumship isn't just spiritual, it's also working for humanity, and holding space for other humans. You got to kind of go through some things to be able to effectively hold space, or you're kind of like ignorant a little bit, right? In not a derogatory way. It's just an honest way. So yeah, I think a lot of well-known mediums, if you look at their lives, they've gone through some things. They've gone through some things. Yeah, I agree. And then going back to 2020, you've always said that. I forgot you said that. You're like, you know what? Everyone else is struggling. Like Danielle's just over here thriving. And I have to say, we've been in the 2020s now for almost 6 years. And that has always been the case. Like when there's a lull in society and things are like a little bit calm, I'm in chaos. And then when society is in chaos and absolute upheaval, shit's going right in my world. I'm like, I don't know why it's like that, but it always seems to be like that. So going back to 2020, we had our first reading, I think 2018, 2019. And I quit my job in First Nations healthcare to pursue my passion of mediumship full time, go drop the kids off, go pick them up, live that kind of like mom life. The math just kind of made sense. Within 3 weeks, I'm in lockdown. So I remember reading for you and I remember reading for your family at my kitchen table. And then I launched Spirit School online a month into my full-time entrepreneurship journey. So right before I launched Spirit School, the online school platform, Spirit School, my podcast started in 2017. But 2020, I launched Spirit School online. And I remember doing a post on Facebook saying, I think I need some help because I can't keep up already a month in with like all the emails, all the things that I want to create. I think I had launched the Language of Spirit at that time, my first online workshop class. And I think I had like 40 people sign up, my first ever online class. I was like, what the what? So when you approached me right away, you were like, I can help you. My first reaction was like, you are way overqualified for what I need. Like, I need someone to like answer emails, like upload things for me, like babysit a Facebook group, like. And you really pitched yourself to me because I was honestly worried about having to pay you too much because I was like, I don't even know what I'm going to be making yet. I was like a month into entrepreneurship. And I was really nervous. It was a huge investment for me in my business. I've been doing it all on my own. But you really did. And if you don't know Danielle, she's one of the most intelligent people you'll ever meet. An incredible writer, journalist, editorial writer. And I'm sitting there like, I need you to like write customer service emails, right? So you were like, no, I can help you. And you were so kind to me because I was so honest with you. I said, you know, I don't know how much I'm going to make in 2 months. I don't know what this could be. I don't have any commitments. And you were just willing to work with me. You're like, I'm willing to work within your budget, within your rate. I'm willing to help you with anything. And I was like, okay, let's do this. Let's see what we can build together.
I truly believe that was really guided by spirit and that my whole life, you know, when I was 17, I went to that first medium and she's like, when can you move here and develop with me? And I never took that opportunity. And so I really, you know, I do believe that when we miss those big opportunities in life, they get brought back until we're ready to say yes. And so for me, I was like, you know, got to pay the bills, but I was like, I don't care what you pay me. I just want to be in this world. Like this world is so, I didn't know it existed. I didn't know how cool this could be. And then especially like, you know, I know a lot of people really, really struggled during lockdown, but even just having that little bit of an online community to connect with was huge. And I'm sure the people participating in the course at the time felt the same way. It gave us something to do, you know, it gave us human connection. And it was really such a, I mean, even today, you know, people often say, oh, you know, what do you do? You know, who do you work for? And mostly it's outdoor brands and I'll list off my clients and then I'll go, oh, and a medium. And they'll be like, medium what? Like, I'm like, okay, well, yeah, we talk to spirit. Okay. And then we just move on often, right? But then every now and then somebody's like, I've always wanted to go to a medium. But yeah, it is quite funny. You continue to be an outlier in my client list and it's fantastic.
Yeah, and I always jokingly say, I'm like, you're the reason I have 100% retention rate because
Exactly.
you've been me since day one. And you saw me launch the initiation. You saw me launch the initiation circle, which is now the collective, like the online community. You were my first community manager. You were like part of my Facebook days. And then I pulled myself like off of Facebook for sure. And, you know, over the years, our roles have evolved and changed and expanded and shrunk. And It's been a wild ride. Entrepreneurship is freaking wild. And you'd been an entrepreneur for some time. I was a new entrepreneur trying to figure things out. 2020s were a little bit wild, very busy. I was so excited to continue to build things and create things. And you always helped me design everything. And my first retreat, you've come to every single retreat. I suppose for me, when we talk about like different boundaries, because that's really kind of the impetus of this whole podcast episode, I would say that boundaries are something we've had to kind of figure out on the go, because this is a very uncommon dynamic and situation. I'm like auntie to your daughter. It's like we are literal friends. Like I go to you when shit in the world is kind of like crazy, and we talk about world events. We talk about politics. Like we talk about, you're my person. Like we're on the same wavelength. And how lucky were we in the 2020s to align like that, when we saw around us how many friends we lost because of values.
Yes, exactly. When the world went crazy, but you and I have always been on the right track, and I'm so grateful for Danielle knowing my level of overwhelm, and you always go through the news and find what I need to know and send me clips and keep me updated on what's going on in the world while I'm chasing a toddler, and I'm so grateful for that. But yeah, it's certainly been a lesson in learning, and it's we've had our bumps in the road, and just always, I think, being like put each other first,
Yeah.
as far as that connection and the value on it. I mean, you saw me through my fertility journey and having a child and going through postpartum and all of those pieces that were incredibly challenging, and somehow we're still here, and the evolution of our relationship has changed over time, but I think we've been able to be really open with each other about what we need, what our boundaries are, what our anxieties are, like what's stressing us out, and just being able to be really honest about that in a way that we know that the other person is going to understand.
Yeah, I agree. I think like we're very respectful of each other and where we're at. Going back to a bit of the news, and then we'll kind of move into customer service stuff too, because you're like my big person there as well. But like, Danielle can get really triggered by like world events and overwhelmed by world events. I love social studies. I can watch world news and just continue to be informed. I think it's part of my spiritual practice. There's nothing that's going on that I don't know about. You can ask Danielle, okay? But I love human nature, humanity, and I study the good and the bad. And I will go to Danielle and give her a curated feed, and I'll give her trigger warnings as well. And I present it to you in a very Gen Z way, don't I? Like I kind of
Definitely.
there's always like a bit of memification with it, but I think it's good to know where like people are at. And I wanted to bring that in to the episode because I think a lot of people are very curious about that. There are some things I cannot see because they trigger me so much. I have my limits as well. There are some things I can't stay on top of as much as others. But it's good to know what you're holding space for. The other thing that Danielle has helped me through a lot and has, sustained a lot is entrepreneurship has been really hard for me. You have seen me go in the la la land of it, go through the hardships of it. You've seen me go through depression for some of my first times. You've seen me want to burn it all down a few times. You've, really given me different perspectives to look at and helped me sustain like a lot of the hard times in entrepreneurship and a lot of the unstable times in entrepreneurship, especially as I've been building and building and building and building, and it has not been easy. And the way that I have coped over the years sometimes is I've disappeared. Like I am someone who, if I get overwhelmed myself, you won't hear from me for a week. And what I've really enjoyed about our relationship and our dynamic and your maturity is you don't take it personally. No. Right? You're not someone who's like, oh my God, Danielle's mad at me. What did I do? Did I not do? You are just like, I don't hear from Danielle for a week or two. She's going through stuff. She'll come back when she figures it out and we'll share then. And so I've really appreciated that as I've been going through my own processing these past couple years. You haven't taken it personally, and you've let me pop back in with different projects and different work to do. And I think that has been part of the boundaries that have really worked for us. If I had felt that Our dynamic was one that was of labor. Like I had to do like emotional labor with you as well. Like that probably would have been really tricky for me to sustain all these years because I already mothered 2 children and like I have to reparent myself half the time, right? It's like I didn't want a dynamic where like I don't know, for you, it's like never felt like really kind of holding space. It's never felt like that. Why is that?
I think part of it too is like to reflect it back to you is that when you disappear or going through challenging times, like obviously I care, but I've never once felt like, oh, Danielle's wondering why I'm not checking in. Danielle's, sitting there feeling sorry for herself because I haven't tried to get a hold of her. Like I've never felt that I had to do that emotional labor for you either. And coming from, a history of contract work and working for smaller companies, one thing that hasn't worked for me is when the leader of, the company I'm working with puts that the stress of their success or not success onto the employees. I know that I'm good at what I do, but the leadership of the company is what's important. And so working with you, work goes through its ups and downs. You build out this fantastic new space. That's a lot of like effort and work and stress at times, and all these different phases that your business has gone through. Even when it's been challenging for you, it has never been put in my lap as I should be doing something different. I should be working harder. I should be more invested, because obviously I'm invested, but you carry the load
Yeah.
for yourself. You own that.
Yeah, and that's something that I've been thinking about this word. Like, this is a word obviously I'm aware of, but you know me, when I study language, I'm like, ooh, this is hitting different at this season of my life. And, I'm about to teach some trauma-informed care work. And, I just met Asha yesterday. She's here in Squamish with me. We're hosting a workshop here at Spirit School together this weekend. And she said, the sense I get from you, like why I wanted to collaborate with you is because you're very whole. There's a wholeness to you. She's like, not to say you're not without chaos and there's not messiness, but there's like a wholeness. And there's a word in trauma for care that I think we both kind of have. And I think that this is kind of final boss healing is containment, right? Mm-hmm. Containment of what you're experiencing. I know that a lot of psychological lack of safety that can come in is when somebody can't contain their shit and they just like bleed on other people and they just want to make everyone else feel like they feel. If I'm suffering, you're suffering. If I'm struggling, you're struggling. People who have spiritual maturity or know how to move through self-healing and like that healing journey know how to contain their stuff. And I think both of us really do have that.
And funny that you bring that up because that word is perfect for this. And I didn't have containment in my postpartum. I went through postpartum depression, and we did have a blip where I was struggling and it bled into my work. But we addressed it and we got through it. And I know that triggered wounds for both of us. With your Chiron, I'm sure that was triggering. And like for me, it was very triggering. But I think there was a lot of empathy, and I think we took it back to basics. We went back to our friendship.
Yeah.
And then, healed, built that trust again, started working together. I mean, it was a very small blip, but yeah, it was I was in postpartum. I was struggling more than I thought I was, and that certainly I wasn't contained. It was a bleeding messiness, and but containment is the perfect word, I think, for how we normally work together.
Yeah. Well, and the times that I'm not contained, like, I'm not going to ever give away my weakest spots because why would I give away my kryptonite? But like, that I have some big triggers in my business and I can't contain because I'm still healing in some ways. Mm-hmm. And I can just give those to you. And I could just be like, thank you for just taking this. And that's how I manage that in my business. The pieces that I'm still kind of healing through, I have to hand off to somebody. And this is the thing where like I always wondered, it's like, do I want to have like a big team? Because I don't love managing people. I don't love having people I feel like I have to manage either, right? Like, and that's why I love working with contractors, because I'm working with other entrepreneurs who get it. And like, that's why I really do like hiring different contractors, right? But it's always like uncomfortable to say what you need. And I think, yes, Chiron for sure. My Chiron's in my seventh house of one-on-one relationships. So those kind of like head-on conversations are always really, really, really tricky. But I'm also a Cancer North node. It's like part of my destiny to start asking for what I need. My therapist last week said to me, flat out pointing her finger at me, she's like, you are allergic to asking for what you need. She's like, you are allergic to asking for what you need. So it's like still something that I'm struggling with. And you can edit this out if you want or keep it. I'll let you say it, but I think people will resonate with this. You know, after you kind of had your baby girl, I remember saying to you at some point, like, you don't even notice, like, the pace is just like there. And we were working at a really busy, fast pace back then. But then I think that maybe you crashed, right? You're like, dang,
100%.
I can't keep this pace. So, I mean, that's a boundary lesson for yourself. And we just had an open conversation. And you know what? We brought in a third person, right? We had somebody else kind of like help with some of the aspects of the team. And it was just important to me that you stayed. So it's like, you know, what do you need? What does your workload need to look like? What pieces of my, you know, body of work do you want to dip into? And so that's how I think that we've sustained all these years, is just continuing the conversation. When I was starting to write my book, I wrote it myself for the first 17,000 words, and I realized I'm not a writer. And so I go to Danielle and I'm like, you know, do you have time to help me write my book? Like, let's do this together. And it's more of like a conversation. Like, I think we treat each other like we're each other's clients. And I think that really works too. And that's the beauty about the dynamic of two contractors. We literally are each other's clients.
Exactly. And that is so true. And I think you, just going back to that postpartum phase, you hit the nail on the head. And one of the most difficult transitions I had into motherhood was the idea that life was going to change, right?
Yeah.
I love my work. I love what I do. I think I said I was only going to take 2 months off. And luckily, you know, yourself and some of my other clients who are also women that have been through it, they were like, no, 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 you're going to need more time than that. I think in the end, I took 4 months off, but it was a very different experience. And I'm not somebody that has been great in my life at having boundaries on like self-care and, you know, working late into the night and those sort of things. I enjoy it. I like the variety, and but certainly having a child forced me to put some boundaries in place, because I all of a sudden was thinking about her. And
Yeah.
so I had to like boundary myself and be a better contractor. And I think it has really, in the long run, I think it's really made me a more efficient worker and better communicator.
Yeah.
But it was certainly a rocky learning phase.
Yeah, well, and I think maybe people will be interested in hearing this too, but my communication style is very different. I'm not someone who plans or maps out months and weeks and years ahead. I have this idea, I want to do this right now. And so what I needed and what we had before was like this peppering. We called it peppering. And I would give you extra money every week just for the peppering, because it was like, that's the way that I work, right? So then what we had to do was figure out, okay, the peppering doesn't work for you. I can't change my communication style. So then there are things that happen in my world that are slower, can be done at the side. And so it was just about like reorganizing everything. And that's it. And when you find like good people, it's like worth the effort to like reorganize and find spaces. So, you know, I'm grateful for you for just your patience and understanding, because it's true, like in entrepreneurship, it's like you just never know what next month is going to look like. And so us being able to have blips, have life-changing experiences, witnessing each other through huge evolutions, that's not something to throw away, right? It's worth to continue conversations and make space for each other in whatever versions of life that we're in.
I totally agree. And I think, you know, we've come so far. I mean, sometimes it seems like yesterday, and sometimes it seems like it's been decades, and it's been 5.5 years. But reflecting back to you, one of the things we touched on early in this conversation was me witnessing your mediumship development over this time as well, and just thinking about the times that you have read for me spontaneously in the last little while. You know, my dad's a strong communicator in spirit, and so he often comes through. And I know when we were at the group reading most recently, I like just had this feeling where I was like, oh, he's like the warm-up act, right? He just came in just to like warm you up, right? Here's an easy one. I'm gonna like you're gonna get warmed up with the audience. They're gonna like all of a sudden relax too, and then it's gonna be easy, right? And you'd said a few things, and I think one of the challenging things about reading for somebody is you know them,
Yeah.
right? So it's a lot harder to find those evidentiary pieces. But the things that you didn't know were what came through. You didn't know that Sydney, my daughter, is currently obsessed with horses.
Mm.
And that came through my dad, who was very cheap in this life, was, telling me through Danielle to give Sydney anything she wanted for horses, right? Just make it rain. Just give her the money. And then we were going on a camping trip the following weekend, and that came through. And you also didn't know that because you were being busy filming, and we didn't have, we weren't sharing those kind of details because life was busy. And you had said, and I haven't actually followed up with you on this, but you had said that because of the fire ban, there was going to be, we would want to roast marshmallows, but we wouldn't be able to because of the fire ban. But my dad would make sure that there was a way to do
Mm.
that. And I was like, oh, okay. Like, I don't know what that's going to be. And we ended up coming back a little bit early, but my uncle sent me a photo, and my cousin had showed up with one of those contained fire things, and the entire family, there's like 20 people around this one little pit roasting marshmallows. And so,
Mm.
I like saw the picture and I was like, I totally blanked, but I was like, I have to send this to Danielle because it happened, right? Like exactly what you said was going to happen happened. And I just think, your mediumship and psychic predictions obviously were so strong when I first saw you, but the way they come through today is with so much ease.
Yeah. After running my business the way that I have run it these past 5 years, even during the TV show filming, I said to the crew, because like the mediumship was just so on point, and I just said, if you would have told me like 6, 7 years ago that the mediumship would be the easiest thing that I did, I would have freaking never believed you, because mediumship for me was, it was hard. It was very high pressure. I knew what good mediumship was and looked like because I'd been seeing it my whole life. And it took me a long time to kind of see myself in that same echelon. And life has been so hard these past couple of years, like with loss, with grief, with audits, with interpersonal shit, right? Like just so hard. The mediumship is a gift. It's a gift. It's ease. It's enjoyable. It's purposeful. I'm just obsessed with it. And so you're someone who has kept me in mediumship. You are someone, because there's a few times, like business for me was so creative. It was so enjoyable. I loved business, and you kept me from the business babe route, which I want to do a whole podcast episode one day just on some of the shit we've seen in some of these adjacent spaces, because it aligns with ethics and integrity. I want to do an episode on different kind ways that we have structured Spirit School, because you really did help me with the accessibility pieces, with the generosity portions of what we do at Spirit School. And those were very important and very value aligned for both of us, but that's not what we see out there in the space. And so there's so much that I want to talk to you about, but the mediumship is easy for me now because everything else is so hard.
That's one way to be grateful, right?
And I love it. I was telling Julie Poole yesterday, I was like, you know what? Like, I just want to do readings. They're so fun and enjoyable. But my life and business is not set up right now just to do readings, right? But you were a huge voice in my head through these past 6 years. Like, don't give up the readings. Don't stop doing them. Because, with one-on-one readings is, like I'm sick right now. I couldn't do a reading today to save my life. And you would have to help me move like 3 readings in one day because I wasn't well enough to do them. Like tricky stuff comes up with readings. But anyways, go
It
on.
certainly does. And I think definitely we have so much to talk about, but definitely I think an episode dedicated to, you've never done a blind offering. Why? We can talk about that. And something that came up for me in this conversation that we don't have time to get to, but I would love to talk about, how do you deliver information that the sitter doesn't want to hear? right?
Yes.
Because that's a big thing, and that's a big thing if you do have a bit of a relationship with the person already, and you know that there's something coming through that you know isn't going to sit well with them initially. Like, how do you deliver that? So yeah, certainly I don't think we're going to run out of things to talk
Yeah.
about in the near future.
I agree so much. So if you're listening to this and you've been enjoying these conversations and you have questions for us, like these 2 episodes were based off of one question on Instagram, the client practitioner boundary. You figure it out as you go. And there's a lot more to say on that. I have a whole class on that in the declaration, which starts Wednesday, the 24th, I think it is. But you can join up until I think the 30th. But yeah, we have a lot to talk about. We're going to continue this conversation weekly. So leave a comment on Spotify. I see all of those now. I know how to respond to those. Hit me up on Instagram, tag me in a share. And yeah, thank you, Danielle, for your vulnerability, for witnessing me, and for joining me with this conversation.
And of course, this has been so enjoyable, and I look forward to these conversations each week now.
Thank you for joining me on Spirit School today, friends. I am so grateful for this time that we spent together exploring the power of spirit, the depths of healing, and the magic of self-discovery. My hope is that each episode leaves you feeling inspired, empowered, and connected to the boundless energy of your own soul. If you've enjoyed today's episode, I invite you to take the next step on your journey by joining me in the Spirit School community. Inside, you'll find a vibrant space filled with like-minded souls, access to exclusive teachings, live mentorship opportunities, and the support to deepen your trust in your spiritual gifts while embracing your humanity. Visit myspiritschool.com to learn more and become part of this growing family of seekers and light bringers. Let's continue to co-create a rich life with spirit, love, and purpose together. Until next time, keep shining your light and walking your soul's path. Take care, my friends, and be well.